To explain world events, you need some personal context. Hello, my friends. I want to set up a scenario, and I want to hear, or I want you to think about your perspective on this. So let's say your family has owned thousands and thousands of acres, a ranch, a giant ranch with thousands and thousands of acres. And you've owned it for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's been your family land for all this time. All of your generations were raised there. Everything was done. After hundreds of years, the people who owned the ranch before you came along and said, "This is our ranch. This is our ranch." And they're like, "No, this is our ranch." And so a fight starts over a plot of earth, right? Then, a couple hundred years later, another group comes in that's aligned with the original group. And they're saying, your land is special to us because there was a historical event that happened there that is core to our beliefs. Okay. So they send an invading army to your ranch, and they try to kick you off your land. Would you defend your home? Would you defend your family's generational home? So those battles continue on and on and on and on. Everyone's fighting over the same plot of land, which your family's been in your family for generations, and you're fighting for it. And the people who owned it hundreds of years earlier are now saying it's there and their ancestral rights. And now they're aligned with more people in the world who are coming, saying this is our special space too, and your farm is not your own. Your ranch is not your own. It's ours. And then that battle goes on for 1,000 years. And then there's a couple big wars in the world and so on and so forth. And after the biggest war, like 3 years after the biggest war, the first people who owned the farm 100 years before your family did said, okay, it's ours now, period. So in 1948, this is ours now. And they decided that they changed the name of the ranch. And they moved in and they set up a whole new structure right in the middle of your ranch, right in the middle of it. Would you be happy? Right? Would you be happy that people are supporting that? Would you be happy? So now you end up with a situation where their family's stronger than yours. And you come to an agreement where you say, well, this is ours and that's yours. But every so often, the people who basically came in and took your ranch, every so often say, well, we're increasing this boundary or we're increasing that boundary. We won't build here. And then next year they start building there. And they start having this struggle with not only those people, but all this whole group of people around them who are supporting them in taking away your family ranch. And this has gone on for thousands of years. You know, this past weekend we saw the people who own the ranch for hundreds of years fighting back. This whole thing is about an argument over whose land it is, who's got rights to that land. Now, if your family had that land for hundreds of years and someone comes along, could imagine if you lived in your house and your house was a historical home and suddenly somebody knocked on your door and said, hey, my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather built this house. This is my house. Get out. How would you feel? How would you react to it? You know, this is all about entitlement. This is all about religion. This is all about power. And the world seems to be supporting the older family. But, in the world right now, there are many different families. There are many different groups, cultural groups that have come and gone. You don't hear a lot about the Phoenicians nowadays. They've literally come and gone. But they never came back and said, I'm taking your house. And that's really the subject of this. Back in 2001, I was in Egypt. 2000, I was in Egypt. And as I have said in many other videos, it was a beautiful experience. Everyone treated me beautifully, treated me well. It was wonderful. One story you haven't heard me tell, I'm going to tell you two stories now from my time there. I went to Jordan, and I came back to Israel. And when you're coming back to Israel at the gate, there's a demilitarized zone between the two. You catch a bus in Jordan, and you have to ride through a demilitarized zone, and you arrive in Israel. There's actually a stretch of land that you drive through that neither side is there. And I got on the bus, and I'm talking. There's this old Muslim man, and he was English from London. And he's talking to me. He says, "John," he says, "Are you going to Jerusalem?" And we were getting along just fine. I am. He says, "Are you going to get a cab, or are you going to take a bus? What are you going to do?" I said, "We're going to take a cab." He says, "Could I share that with you? I'll pay for my half. No problem." I said, "Sure, no problem." I don't see an issue with anybody who's like that. I'm there, right? So we arrive in Israel. We get out. Me and my friend Michael, we walk up to the customs, the border patrol, and it was rather interesting because there were three women in the booth, and they were all beautiful. They all looked like Gal Gadot. Just beautiful women. And we hand them our American passports. And they're joking and flirting with us and smiling, and they let us go right through, no problem. And then this man walked up, who was carrying a British passport, but he was dressed as a Muslim. It took him 45 minutes to come through customs. And now we had gone through, and we got outside, and I had given this man my word that he could ride with us. So we found a drive. We waited. We waited for him. And he comes through, and Michael finds the driver and brings him over. And we're like coming over, and the guy brings his car up, and we start to load up, and this Muslim man walks up and starts to put his back, and the driver says he can't get me. He doesn't speak English. He's speaking Hebrew. So he was like, no. I said, oh, yeah. He's getting in. He's coming with us. No. I said, oh, yeah, no, he's coming with us. Eventually, the guy caved. And Michael and I sat in the back of the car, and he drove, and the Muslim man sat on the right side of the front. And we're driving to Jerusalem. And we're talking. And the two in the front are talking to each other in I'm assuming, Hebrew. They were having a conversation that I couldn't understand. And you could tell it was curt, right? And we drove. We got all the way into Jerusalem, and he took us to our hotel. We got out. We gave him our share of the money, and he said, "Where's the rest?" And I said, "He's got the rest." I said, "And he'll give it to you when he gets to where he's going," because they dropped us off at a hotel, and we were going to Jerusalem. And the guy, all right, and he ended up driving him to the thing. And, he says, thank you. And the Muslim man says, thank you so much, John. Thank you so much. I know this was a pain, basically. He was being very kind. And so watching that interaction between, they just hated each other, not because they were different. They spoke the same language, but because they were dressed differently and they believed differently. This is what this whole thing in front of me was. Now, the driver was the family who used to own the ranch, And the passenger was the people who owned the ranch for the last several hundred years. And this was the ongoing struggle here. When I went to Mount Sinai, I've told that story plenty of times, but what I didn't tell you is after we had our experience climbing and then meeting that guy who was the American butthead, um, we came back to the car. We had drivers come pick us up, and it was two Egyptian men. And we got in the car, and we were just loving talking to them, having a great time. We fell asleep in the back of the car for part of that trip and felt completely safe, no problem. But we got into a real serious conversation, and the one kid asks a real, and I say kid, they were in their 20s. The one kid asks a real serious question. He says, why does America support Israel? And I said to him, I said, let me just give you a framing of this. I said, 90% of Americans don't know why we support Israel. 90% of Americans are too busy shopping on Amazon.com or going to the latest movie, or they don't really have an effect on world affairs. I said, for you, this is very personal because it's your backyard. It's right where you are. I mean, you live this daily. You live this struggle daily. Americans are so far removed from it. You know, the whole idea of we support them or we support this is a government thing. And the whole argument is that, you know, America supports Israel mainly because they've allied to take this ranch. And because to them, the ranch is sacred. Do I have a side in this fight? Historically, I do have a side in this fight. I think that going back and taking the land away and then saying this is ours now is kind of wrong. I think, you know, making an agreement to say we're not going to build here and then building there is wrong. But that land grab has been going on for thousands of years, at least 1,500, right? It's not a new war. It's an old war. And 1948 is not that long ago. And that's when the last big attack that really turned it into a hardcore war happened. 1978, they invaded again, but every other time it's happened, Israel goes in and wipes out whole sections of people, and they just go in and they show their force and they show their power, and then, you know, all the nations of the world say we're on Israel's side. And so, in reality, there are certain people in the world who are trying to make the Palestinians go the way of the Phoenicians, and I don't know. I have a real. It's an ongoing struggle. It's an ongoing struggle. I see injustice. I also see injustice on both sides because there are people in Israel who are just having coffee in the morning and they get hit by a rocket. You know, there are civilian casualties on both sides. There was a thing on the news yesterday about it was a Palestinian woman who was saying, oh my God, what are they going to do to us now because of this attack? She had nothing to do with the attack. She was like, they're going to come in and wipe us all out. They're going to wipe us all out. She wasn't part of the attack. She didn't make the decision to make the attack. But because of the attack, now she was terrified and knowing that her entire race was about to be wiped out. It's a sticky affair over there. But the sticky affair that you're looking at is based in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's all a religious construct, a religious battle over holy lands and fighting for their holy lands and fighting for... But if you take all that out of it and come back to if you're the owner of a ranch and people come in and say, hey, we owned this ranch hundreds of years ago, it's ours now. And we have all these big people over here saying it's ours too. And then you go in one day and just take it, take sections of the land with this backing. People don't look at that perspective. People don't look at it from the perspective of what the Palestinians have had happen to them for 2,000 years. And those two Muslim guys who were driving me from Mount Sinai back to Sharm el-Sheikh, they were lovely guys. We laughed, we joked, we had a wonderful time. They really didn't understand why America supported Israel, because it was their ranch. So I don't know if that gives you context or not. I think it's all religious violence. And it's one of the things I talk about, the whole idea of, I think we ought to let religions go to the wayside, because religions spawn violence. I'm right, you're wrong. Bam, there's a fight. So I wanted to hop on. I know that I said I wasn't going to work on this Sunday, but there's too much going on in the world, and people are asking me about it. So I wanted to jump on and put it out. So there's my thought on that. You guys have a great day. I'll see you. Bye.